Okay, week for April 29. This quiz is 10 questions on the same spot, on the same flop, in the same situation, but you have to look at how different turns and rivers play out. All right, so it's all going to be, as you can see, small blind, big blind in the single raise pot. On the board 9, 7, 5 with a flush draw. Yeah, right. So here's in the small blind, and here's in the small blind in all of these. Okay, so focusing on out of position play as well. All right, so here in the small blind, checks the flop, villain bets we call. Here checks again, villain pots it, and now we have to decide what we're going to do. All right, so what do you guys think of these options here? So this board, basing this action, given the turn action. These options: fold, call, raise, not within range. What do you guys think about Hero's decision to check the turn here? You guys have donking range on this turn card?
Is my mic on? Okay.
Alright, so we usually start these by figuring out what's not within range.
Yeah, so I know the answer here, but I don't have good reasons for it because I just brute forced it a while ago. Like, remember, this is like the one question I really didn't understand, so I'll just stay quiet.
Can you move it up just a little bit?
Alright, so the key for the not within range here is this decision to. You can either think of a few different decisions where you split your range, right? So you can either a hand which always bets, a hand which always raises, or a hand which always donks. Okay, so which of these hands would do all of them? Do one of them?
Would Queen 8 check raise the flop?
Yeah. So yeah, Queen 8 here. Overcard, gut shot. Backdoor straight off the nuts. The top end with the Jack 10 run out. All good things. I mean, the Jack 10 run out, while it's fairly rare, it's going to be what, 15 combinations of that out of 190, whatever it is, given your opponent's hand. What was it, 1081? Maybe 1081. Still, that's something like 1.6% extra equity to Queen 8. And it's extra strong equity, so 1.5, 1.6%. More runouts, which you basically make the nuts. So this was always check raise to flop. So it's not within range there.
So because of the Jack 10 run out, you're saying?
Yeah, it's because of the Jack 10 run out.
Oh, you hit the nuts on it? Okay, and you said it happens 15 out of something times?
Yeah, so the Jack 10 run out.
Yeah.
There's a 16 combinations of Jack 10.
Right.
And how many of those aren't going to make? And half of them aren't going to make the flush. Half of them will make the flush. So maybe it's just 0.8%. 0.75, something like that. Still, it's a little bit extra, and it'd be good to have there. Also, like this is a minor thing, like here in the opening ranges, like we don't really open Queen 8 offsuit from a small blind, because of that, there's no offsuit combinations of queen eight, right? So you're gonna have to put a bit more of the suited combinations in because you can't just fill that gap with offsuit combos. All right. So there is some differences between the suited combos and the offsuit combos in terms of continuing or not. So yeah, with the queen eight, we're always going to be raising the flop because you get the gut shot, the flush draw, and the jack 10, right? Yeah. If 10 comes, you can keep firing. If jack comes, you keep firing because you can end up picking up the double gut shot, right?
Yep. Okay, makes sense now.
So isn't it fairly straightforward now? 6-4 is no good. Queen 5 could raise, and queens would call.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there is queens that raises, so don't be too quick to jump on the fact that the queens there was always a call. There is some queens that raises, right? And then the reason is it's purely for value here. You raise and then check the river kind of thing. Try and deny at the same time. I mean, well, they don't check when it's a really good run out, but when the run out gets kind of dicey for you, like a king, then you can check it. So it is a semi-value, semi-equity denial check raise there. Okay, so the next spot, Villem's half pot and call, only 7. Alright, hero checks, and then Villem bets pot.
Well, I think with the two pairs at the top and bottom are going to be raising on the flop, right? Or something like that. So
I
like
don't think
the
You think 7-5 is not within range?
I mean, maybe it is.
So normally the bottom two pair or the top and bottom, you actually play it more passively because you want to wait for the run out to not like screw you. Because if the 9 pairs, then 7-5 changes completely, right?
Well, yeah. Well, there was a spot. I don't remember exactly, but it was from a previous tutorial. We raised all the two pair except top and bottom.
Yeah, but in the straight board here, like the very connected board, I think it's different.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think ace 9's not in the range.
No, I think ace 9's out of the range.
Because I think that's going to definitely raise the flop.
He's going to raise the flop all the time.
I don't think ace 9 is going to be raising the flop all the time.
Either that or it's going to bet it itself.
Well, I was going to say I think ace 9 might block the turn or something.
You're going to block the turn with ace 9.
Ace 9 just seems like a hand that's super strong, but could, like, just so many rivers or turns are bad for it that it needs to put some pressure on.
Well, you see how those two terms contradict?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to figure out a way around that. You got to contradict each other. Like it can't both be strong and weak, right? Like if here face 9 on the flop is strong, that by definition means that there's a lot of runouts, which it will become a strong hand, and then win at showdown, right? Because that's how we define what a strong hand is.
Yeah.
So
I
the
mean,
ace.
well, I say might be
Yeah, sorry,
doing that with
what you're saying is cutting out a lot. You can type if you want. We'll be able to respond still.
oh,
You can just type into the tutorials in theory chat.
That was me last time. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so the ace nine, it could raise the flop.
yeah, just because it could raise the flop doesn't mean it's going to always raise the flop.
No, but if it doesn't raise the flop, would it not bet the turn?
You want to donk
Would
the
it,
turn,
like,
yeah?
donk the turn?
So you want to donk the turn with ace-9?
So if you want to donk the turn with ace-9, why do you want to donk the turn with ace-9?
You could, I think.
Anyway. Ace-9's not within range. Because it always donks the turn. So,
Oh, it does donk turn.
Yeah, it always donks the turn. Alright, what are the other ones?
All right. Okay.
There's a lot of donking on this turn. This turn's really good for your check call range. So, in terms of the hands that will donk, usually the donk size will be fairly small, and so you want that range to be kind of mergy towards the top, right? So definitely ace-9 is going to be in there. In terms of like having a lot of trips and stuff, sure you have a lot more trips in your donking range than in your checking range, but you still have so many trips here that a lot of them will check to check raise. The donk here was here with the ace-9 you can bet like 3 big blinds, quarter of the pot, something like that, or possibly even smaller, possibly a little bigger. And the idea is to prevent your opponent from potting into you, because I'm super comfortable with big calling this pot size bet here on the turn.
I'm pretty confident about the rest.
7-5 would be the raise.
Yeah, so ace-5 is pretty clearly the fold, right?
Yep.
Like, it's got nothing to really go for. It's not even that happy if it hits an ace. And then the 5 is, like, still not great, and it blocks the flush. It's just generally not good. Okay, and then the...
8-7 the call.
8-7 call, 7-5 raise.
You don't want to call 7-5?
It's a...
No, we can raise it. It
Yeah,
blocks.
I wanna
It
raise.
blocks. I think we have to bet it ourselves. In other words,
On both
Like
sides
7-5?
are pretty strong.
So I feel like 7-5 is going to want to raise here and then jam the river.
Is blocking a 5 important?
It's not necessarily blocking the 5, but having the boat.
well, it blocks some 2 pairs and it blocks some sets. Eight, 7, 8.
Yeah, right. This is a raise, this is a call.
Yeah.
So like here 7-5, blocking the 5 might be important in other spots, but here neither of you guys are going to have a 5 going into the river after either calling. So if you call, you don't really have a 5, and they don't really have a 5, they bet. So having a 5 doesn't really make sense to have it in your calling range, the 7-5, so might as well just raise it.
Okay.
Okay. Over there. So here, this is the donking range is fairly substantial. So like on these, if we go to turn report, checking frequency, like you can see on a 5 and on a 7, yeah, it's a lot of donking. All right, all the other turn cards, not so much, but definitely on a 7 or on a 5, there's a bit of donking. All right, and roughly the donking frequency is about the same, 64.9, and the range is going to be fairly similar too. Well, the range is going to be identical for all the 7s. In terms of the range, you got top pair. Like you can look at the breakdown of the range here for the small bet size. 23.6% top pair, 19.4% weak pair. Right, that's in like a 5, and then 14.5% 7x. So it's fairly emergy, and then the checking range, weak hands in general. Okay, so splitting the range up into the two sizes. You need to weaken the checking range because otherwise it becomes too strong and your opponent will check back too often. Here, betting, forcing your opponent to raise you and fold. Like, your opponent should know that this card is fairly strong for your range. Here, like before you check, you're 11.6% trips versus them only having 6.45% trips. They've got a little bit more straights and all that because you would have check raised all your straights. But the amount of trips that you've got is enough to defend the rest of the range. So that you want it to be donking. And donks for a small size, try and deny a bit of equity, try and get them to just call. And then if they call, like it's pretty standard from there. Once it goes don't call, it's kind of like a regular range versus a regular range then. A regular merge range versus a regular merge range, because all their very strong hands would have raised you, and then they call in position, the river comes, you're going to have some nut hands, they're going to have some nut hands, you're going to have some very weak hands, they're going to have some very weak hands, they're just going to play the river the same way as if it was like the same kind of way as if it was like a check down line. In terms of having multiple bet sizes on the river, alright? Okay, so yeah, alright, next one. So we check raise, they call, we check, and they pot it into us. So any thoughts about which hand's not within range?
I think so. Can you just move it up a little bit again? So villain bets the queens on the turn. Right after raising villain's flop bet, when the queen comes on the turn, I'm pretty sure that hero doesn't check. Well, he can, I guess. But that's my first thought, that the queens would bet there. And that's why it's not in the range.
I think the queens is a little bit here.
Yeah.
Everyone else agree?
Yep.
Okay, why does the queens always bet here?
Well, it wants to get it can get value from draws and
Yeah, but why would you bet when you can check raise or something like that? Why do you want to do that instead of taking a different option?
because I when the queen villain calls the raise on the flop. He's not necessarily gonna bet if we check.
Why not? So if we check here, they're going to bet half the time. We know that they're going to bet a little bit half the time, a little bit less than half the time. All right. So assuming that, why does queens want to bet here rather than check?
Well, I must have more betting EV than checking EV.
Yep, but why?
I
Yeah,
know.
you-
I'm trying to.
So you have to think. So because
I'm
villain,
just trying to think why it does.
think having the queen of spades will definitely make him. Like if he had the queen of spades, he would bet it a lot more. So we block that aspect.
Well,
Like
it,
so, like you have to think about
isn't
what
there an urgency to get value now
why.
than have uh, certain turn cards or certain cards hit on the river, like a spade. Like if a villain's on a draw, he may want to check back the
Okay,
turn.
so like on the turn, your
and see that
SPR.
we're free. So it's in a way, it's like equity denial and value and protection.
So on the turn, you have an SPR of like 3.5,
That's the
right?
best I got right now, I think.
So on the turn, you have an SPR of about 3.5. So like queens would be very happy to get it in. Like almost, yeah, like almost any run out that's not like 8 of spades or 6 of spades or something. Like if a random spade comes like a deuce of spades that doesn't include anything else, like your queens with the queen of spade is more than happy to get it all in. Right? With a SPR like when there's already 24.5, sorry, 24 like big blinds in the pot. So I don't think that's the reason.
I would agree with that assessment. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, it's all right. So yeah, I don't think that could be the reason. Like so, I think that what it comes down to, like, why you're going to choose to like okay, when you're out of position, the hands that you choose to bet as opposed
Is
to
there something I'm
check raise.
missing, Tom?
Yeah, so-
Thomas, in my reasoning here, other than value, equity denial, and protection.
Well, I'm asking the difference between why you want to bet it rather than check raise it.
Yeah, so when you want to, so I think like a good rule of thumb in order to decide between which hands you want to bet and which hands you want to check raise is you have to think about, like, are you blocking what he will bet, right? And the queens will block a lot of what he will bet.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's the answer here. If you check the hands that he's going to bet, a lot of it
Yeah,
will have a queen.
especially we'll have the queen of spades in it. Yeah, because we raise the flop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we raise the flop, which queens does he have? He has all like he has a lot of stuff with the queen of spades in it. Like something
Yeah.
like
There's a fair amount of one pair hands now and two pair hands. That'll all bet the turn if you check. So here by checking we end up blocking his bets. All right. So that's kind of the reasoning that I wanted you to come up with.
Because of the spade, because we have the queen of spades.
Well, I mean, even if you didn't have the queen of spades, it still would queen would still block a fair amount of his queen x. That would bet if you had checked. So here by checking the queens, you end up blocking his bets with his top pair and two pair hands, like for example queen 5 or queen 7 or something. Oh yeah, queen 7 probably, yeah. So you end up blocking a lot of those bets. All right, so then your check raise will be unsuccessful rather than just betting yourself. So it's not within range for that reason. So like when you're out of position, right, you always got to think about why you're going to be betting this hand, right? Why you're going to be betting, like if you've got a very strong hand, why you would rather bet rather than check raise, and often on the turn of the river, the blocker effects become quite important. They're still fairly important on the flop too. So because of those blocker effects, you would consider using those blockers to either check or bet certain strong hands. Yeah. Say for example the set of 9s, 7s, and 5s, as like a counter example to that. they might sometimes check because they end up blocking check backs, right? So if you've got like a set of sevens, you're going to block a lot of their check backs with their 7x, and so your hand is basically the same strength as queens. They can go for a check raise instead. Yeah, does that make sense? So we get a very strong hand, decide whether it's better to check it according to the blockers it has. But this is especially true with sets, because sets quite heavily block that particular pair. That you want to use it accordingly. Any questions about that? No. All right. So which one's raise? Which one's raise? Which one's call? Which one's fold?
Okay, I'd have a hard time continuing Jack 9.
Why is that?
Just not that strong. Like, it's like pure bluff catcher facing this big bet, like this big pot size bet.
Okay.
Um,
How would you rank your 9x?
Sorry.
How would you rank your 9x? So think about all the 9x that you have here. How would you rank them all?
Yeah, so you definitely want to have like, you'd want to either have a draw with your 9, a 2-pair with your 9, or at the very least not block what his bluffing hands might be, like Jack 10.
Yep, great. So this hand does the exact opposite of what you want out of a 9.
Yeah,
So
it just
it's
felt
always
like
a
you
fold.
did. Yeah.
Right, like if you think it's indifferent, right, in terms of if you think it's in between, if you think it's weaker than all his value and stronger than all of his bluffs, you have to find other reasons to either call or fold it.
Mm-hmm.
And those other reasons include blocking bluffs, being able to outdraw the value. This hand can't do either. Like it blocks bluffs with a jack. It can't really outdraw like a queen 5. So compared to like king 9, it doesn't really block too many bluffs. Sure, it blocks hands like random king high bluffs, but it can outdraw like queen 7 or something like that. All right, and the raise and the call.
Yeah, this is tough for me.
I think 8-5 is the raise and king 3 is the call. I think 8-5 has more going for it in terms of equity, like straight and flush and blockers. Makes a good raise. And king 3 makes a good call.
Okay, so why do you think king 3 makes a good call? Like, you only improve on a king and a spade. So it's a lot of money to put in with just what is that? 3 plus 9, 12 outs. Like I know the answer, but like I think we need better reasoning than that. I think, like, as the hands are right now, neither of them have showdown value.
All right, so what's that decision between the king 3 and the 8-5?
I think
Is
the
it
8-5 has more
sorry.
going for it as a raise for its blockers, and its extra utility as a straight and a flush. I think the king 3 makes a good call.
Yeah, but like, do you have a like? Why? Like, I still don't see why you think king 3 makes a good call.
Can I jump in when it's my
Sure.
time?
Yeah. Go.
Okay. I would say king 3 is a fold because you don't get the pot odds here, and even a king can be wrong, and he might even have the ace spade draw also. And ace 5 is a jam because you have the straight flush draw, straight draw, and a 5. It might be good versus like ace queen.
So we know we're either we're either calling or raising it. It's not a fold.
No, I raised.
Sorry.
King 3 is a fold, and ace 5 suited is a raise.
So we know that it's either calling. King 3 is either calling or raising, and we're trying to figure out which one.
Ah, okay.
It's not folding.
Okay, so you have to sort. Okay, you can't put many more in. You can only put one hand in one box.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, I don't get why king 3 should be a raise versus that bet size also, and ace 5 has a lot of equity. So if I would raise something, it would be that one.
So the equity of each of the hands, like 8-5 is like clearly slightly stronger because it's already got a pair, so it's got the 2 pair outs and it's got the gut shot. So 8-5 like is obviously like slightly nicer hand, but you still have to have a better reason to sort them than that, I think. Gonna see if people have written anything.
Yeah. So that's gonna be raised. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So like this hand just jams.
Yeah.
Or a lot of the other hands here on the turn, because the sack pot ratio is fairly low. All the other hands with how many outs does this have? This would have like 15 outs, right? All the other 15 out hands would just jam as well. King 3, so king 3 calling
I don't
rather
know
than
why
folding.
king 3 should be raised flop on the flop.
Because there's a flush draw to the second nuts. Anyway.
Yeah. It's this thing. Yeah.
Sorry, you should be raising your flush. You should be raising your flush. You should be playing your flush draws fairly aggressively throughout. Anyway, what was I? Yeah, in terms of pot odds, here you're getting 33, a third, right? So you're getting 33.3%. Okay, so this is your pot odds, 1 and 3. In terms of like your equity, in terms of like your equity, you've got 9 outs to make a flush. Okay.
And the king has to be good
You
stuff.
want to check raise? You want to check raise because you need fold equity on a 9-7-5 board. It's not a lot of fold equity on, especially versus big blind calling range.
You obviously have fold equity.
Yeah, I mean people.
Yeah, but you don't have
will
much
bet and
fold
fold.
equity.
Just wondering, when you actually get there on the river with king 3, do we do a bunch of donking on the flush?
Well, I mean that's not necessarily the case because here the sack pot ratio will be roughly 1 on the river. It's not.
No, it'll be like
when the flush gets there, you got to think about what your EV is when you've got a flush. So like this is what I'm saying, right? So this is 9 and 44 against a pair, and then like 8 and 40, 8 and 47 and 44 against another flush draw.
like a king could just be good some of the time too. Like your 3 outs to a king could definitely be fine sometimes.
Yeah, I mean king high can probably be good too. For some of the time.
I was just thinking, since we don't have direct equity versus the pot odds, so we need to be able to get the money in.
So the way that you figure this out is you have to think about how strong your flush draw is, and then
it's pretty strong.
You can estimate what share of what your EV is when the flush comes in. All right, so like the pot or on the river will be, what will it be, 72, and then there's 60 something behind. All right.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so 72 and then 64 behind. And so on the river, okay, how often is he going to bet? He's probably going to bet about half the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like on the river with a flush, because like you're going to be you're going to like if he doesn't bet half the time, then you can just don't jump jam yourself, right? Either way, let's assume that you don't jam, and then he defends accordingly. And say he folds about half the time and calls about half the time. So then you're going to win about half the remaining stacks. So then your EV is going to be on the flush making rivers is going to be like the 72 plus about 32 from a stack. It's going to be 104. So 104 times your 20.45.
Divide by 100.
Can I ask you, because the line is small blind opens, big blind calls, hero checks, William bets, then he check raises on the flop, and William calls, so it's a 3-bet pot, and
No, it's
then
single
hero
raise
check-
pot.
No. Single raise pot.
What?
The single raise pot.
Oh, he calls.
We
Yeah,
check
sorry.
raise
He
the
checks
flop,
raises- Yeah, he check raises on the flop, and then he checks raises again. Shouldn't
No,
he
no, no.
continue barreling here?
Don't. Oh,
Well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with check raising twice.
No, but I'm telling you because what the line choosing with the hands, and hero checks again with the flush draw. I don't think he does that.
Why not? If you go check, you make a flush, and then you win more than the pot.
So it doesn't make sense here. I mean, if Willem pots it here,
Why does it not make
just call
sense?
here with king three suited.
Well, I'm just about to show you why you can just call with king 3 suited. Anyway, so you win 104. So you win 104 20.45% of the time, or you win roughly 100. So you're winning like 21-ish big blinds just from your flush draw line, and it's not too unfathomable to make the remaining 3 big
so
blinds.
we need to make up
situations.
24 big blinds over like the flush plus
Flush
like
plus
2
king, just random king high, and then also when the king comes in. When the king comes in, you probably win about half the pot, and that happens in 3 outs. And when it becomes absolute brick, it goes check a little bit of the time, and you probably win maybe like 3 or 4 big blinds when that happens.
Okay.
So
Nice.
it's probably
Do we not get
it
cooler
probably is
time
enough.
on the flush?
No, like we just showed you win 104 when the flush comes in on average. I mean,
No, right.
Worry about the nut flush. That's not really. Yeah, we don't even need too much about that.
Okay. Yeah.
Say you drop this down to 100, then 20.45, winning the other 4 big blinds from the other run outs, from the other rivers is probably not too difficult. Right,
Okay. I guess like the call
even
isn't
king
like
picking up would be
massively.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and answering the other questions with the check raise check here, like there's nothing wrong with checking a flush draw here. You need to give up some hands. Of course, you can just be betting them at a fairly high frequency. I'll show you guys the line. So it looks like here. This is what the betting range on the turn looks like. Queen basically just continues because of the reasons that we discussed. So that's not within the range. Unlike nines, eights, and fives. Well, I mean, here this is what happens with the flush draws. Right, so there's a lot of flush draws, and most of them bet at a high frequency, but there's still going to be checking. When it goes check, and your flush makes it.
Yeah, but I agree with that you are raised on the flop so you can get a free card on the turn and realize your equity out of position.
You can't get a free card if you're out of position.
Yeah, I mean you're never going to get a free card.
No,
You're always
but,
going to get
yeah,
you're always going to
okay,
get
I
half
agree
a
with
free.
that, but he should be checking back a lot of times when he get raised and he calls on the flop.
Yeah, after his check raise call check, then he should be at half the time.
Yeah, but then he pots it, and then I don't think king 3 is even a call here. It's a fold.
Yeah,
We just did the math for that.
we're not playing against Tenor now here. We're playing against people who are trying to beat us.
Okay, got it.
Like you should always assume that your opponent is super strong, even if you're playing Tenor on some. All right, unless they've shown you otherwise. All right.
So how weak does the flush draw have to be that we start folding it?
Yeah, probably not. Probably never gonna be folding a flush draw. Yeah.
Okay.
Like check pot. Yeah, there's no flush draws that fold.
Wow.
And that just goes to show that you shouldn't be folding flush draws. Just don't fold flush draws, guys. They're just like super strong.
Wow.
Also,
yeah,
like maybe is it
pretty
foobar?
rare to be folding a flush draw.
Yeah, is it
Yeah.
foobar? Yeah. So like you can like always you can continue the flush draw and then fold the river when you don't hit. That's fine. You don't have to commit anymore, right? But the fact that you could like win like the entire stack when you hit your flush is super. Like the EV of that will just supersede when you miss, right? And you can bluff too.
It's just a bit harder to bluff when you're out of position because then you gotta then you need a turn. Or sorry, then you need a river where you can actually have a donk range, right?
Yeah, and like there's some like look, sometimes you're gonna put in 24 big blinds and then just check fold, right? But if so the 9 out of 44 times a spade hits, 20% of the time, you probably win the entire stack.
Yeah, we kind of did the math on that. I'll show you what happens on the 2 of spades. So on the 2 of spades, the EV of the king 3 is 98.81. Is there like a river report we can do without having to? No, that's lame. It shouldn't be too difficult. Close enough.
I'm guessing the intuition is just so the flush gets in. They're not betting it.
The donking frequency on the spades. There you go. There's still a lot of checking. There is some donking.
Okay.
2 of spades, like ace of spades, obviously is going to be way higher. Right, 99. 6 of spades, and you just start donking yourself, 103. Jack of spades, 104. So like the EV is when a spade comes is probably a little over 100, which we calculated. And that's because you can always just jam it in, and then they have to call a decent chunk of the time, and so they're going to give you the stack that chunk of the time. All right. Yeah. What was the 3 do? Okay. Flush draws are really strong when there's a lot of stack left. When there's like around a pot size bet left on the river, it's pretty hard to fold a flush draw even out of position against really big bets. Right, it's just difficult.
Yeah, it's surprising that even here when the river is even a bit less than pot that we're still not folding any of them.
Yeah, like you only really start to fold flush draws on isn't the 2 card flush draws when there's 2 flushes on the two different types of flush draws on the board, or if the board is paired. So for example, this was the Queen of Diamonds. It goes check pot. Then yeah, I mean, then you start to fold a little bit of flush draw, tiny amount. Or if it pairs up, check pot, and then a lot of flush draws are folding. So yeah.
So on the 2-tone, on the double flush draw boards, we start folding them because we just have too many.
Yeah, but it's still even then like it's hard to find the one that you want to fold. Like here, for example, on the Queen of Diamonds, after it goes check pot, like it's kind of counterintuitive that the only flush draw that you fold is specifically this King 4. It's difficult to find that. So like if you want a heuristic, to basically if the board's not paired and you've got enough stack left, always find a way to continue with your flush draws. Right? Obviously, if you get jammed on, right, and your flush draw doesn't have enough odds to call, you just fold. But like if there's enough stack left, even if you're out of position, you're still continuing with your flush draw.
How
Yeah,
much do you need on
Sorry.
the stack left? How much do you need on the stack left?
I mean,
as long as it's enough.
about a pot size bet. Like you just have to think about how much, how often the opponent's going to give you the remainder of their stack on the river, and then how often, and then the bet size that they're going to be using, right? So we just showed that with roughly a pot size bet left, and you've got a strong flush draw, you're going to win roughly 1.5 times pot, right? Because when you make the flush draw, your hand is basically the nuts. And then you win another half of the pot because they're going to call your pot size bet half the time, right? And so then that means you win 1.5 times the pot on the river, which is 1.5 times 3 times the bet that you called. Did I do that right? I don't even know if I did that right. Probably didn't explain that right. Let me get my trusty paint tool out. So this is the pot is 1, and then you've got 3 left, right? And then they bet 1, and then you bet 1. Okay, so the pot going into the river is going to be 3. So you've called it. So EV is -1 so far. Okay, and then you've got 3 left over. Okay, and then when the flush,
you have 3 after the call.
Yeah, so you've got 3 after the call, and the pot is 3.
Okay.
And
We actually have
and
2.
then you've got 3.
No, I guess we start with 4.
So yes, we start with 4. Right, and now so -1 because of your call, and then the river card comes, right? So it's either the flush or it's no flush. Okay, so if it's a flush, right, then you win this amount plus half of this amount because they fold half the time, so you win 4.5. Okay, and if flush draw doesn't come in, you win 0. Okay, so
Right, they fold half because we're betting pot.
you bet pot into the bet, so they fold half time.
Yeah.
Right, it might be a little bit more, but like yeah, close enough.
Yeah.
So then your pot odds are going to be 1/3. Right, your equity. So this is your pot odds omega. So your equity is like 20%. So 20%, right? And so then your EV is going to be 20% times this, right? So 20% times 4.5 is about 0.9. Okay, this is approximately 20%. Okay, so 0.9. So it just means that you need a little bit more to either winning a little bit more because the stacks are a bit deeper, or you have the extra 0.1 of the pot from somewhere else.
Like just rivering a pair or something like that.
Yeah, and we're doing a pair and then you
Yeah,
check.
the king, maybe.
Yeah, I mean king high with king 3. Yeah.
Where do we find the extra 0.1 for like the weaker flush draws that don't make like an overpair?
Well, I mean those will either just they can just jam the turn kind of thing, right? So that's why it's not folding. So it's like if it's got enough showdown value, whether it can just win at showdown or it can make a pair and then have that pair win at showdown, because they're only going to be betting into you half the time on the river, right? A good chunk of the time, maybe a little bit more than half the time. Yeah, if you make a pair and it goes check, right, you're going to be winning, like probably 1/5 or to 1/10 of the pot because of that.
And is this also included rake?
The rake in this sim is
I mean, so like if
one
this a lot of this will just be happening after the rake cap, so then you don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
When you get to this level here, when you're looking at
The rake
only
is already taken.
when you're looking at only having a pot size bet left behind, hopefully you would have reached the rate cap already. Like if you've got 60 big blinds in the middle or 70 big blinds in the middle, hopefully that hits your rate cap.
Yeah, maybe for because I just did it. So let's say your king is good. Like if your king is good too, then you have 27%, right? And that'll get you 1.23, like your EV there is 1.23, like pots or whatever. So that's more than the -1. So the king 3 can definitely call. And like let's even discount the 3 outs that you're only good. Like let's say it goes check check when it's a king, then you win. Here I'll just do it quickly. So 20% times you get 0.9 on the spades, and then 3 and 44. Let's say you just win the pot of 3.
I suppose the
That-
hand
that
wavy
makes-
math is just 0.1 of the
Yeah.
pot is not hard to find somehow.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
like here, when it just becomes a brick, an offsuit 2 goes check check another time, you win 8 big blinds, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's not a brick, then that doesn't happen, right? It goes check check, and you win against like chop against some king high, and you win against a bit of jack high. They missed the flush draw.
Can we look at like a crappier flush draw? Like, doesn't have a king high. I don't know what's like the crappiest flush draw we have.
Yeah, so this is what happens to your flush draws, and like the idea
I
is
guess we don't have too many crappy ones.
yeah, I mean that's queen 3. The idea is like you want to set up your ranges so that you're not folding flushes, so you're not folding flush draws, right?
Makes sense.
You want to play your flush draws in a way that you don't have to fold them.
So is this the case basically all the time on the turn, or is this because we check raise the flop and so that our range is stronger and doesn't have like these jankier flush draws?
So if you don't check raise the flop though, then you'll have a lot of stack left.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean
Right.
the flush draws that don't check, right, are like these weaker ones. So like here, this jack high flush draw, queen high flush draw. Oh no, that's a pair. Like the jack high flush draw, like this is the 10-6 and all that other stuff. Like they always bet. So you don't have to worry about having a fairly weak flush draw.
Yeah, so I was wondering if the reason why we looked at the flush draws there and we don't have too many really weak ones because we check raised it. But I guess again, if we didn't check raise, we'd have more stack depth, so it solves itself, like Marcus said.
Yeah, I mean it's like if you go through a bunch of sims, you'll see that it's going to be fairly difficult to find a spot where you're overfolding a flush draw. Like here, they bet twice the pot. All your flush draws call. All your flush draws continue. I don't know. Right, just don't put yourself in spots where you're going to be folding flush draws. Like if you think that I've got a flush draw here, I'm going to check and then fold to a bet, you've done something wrong.
Right. What's the EV of the call on the flush draw?
In that spot, it was like 2 big blinds. So if you'd folded that, you would have lost 2 big blinds, 200 big blinds behind your hands.
Okay. I was just thinking against some like nittier pools, maybe you don't get paid often enough on the flush run out somehow. So then, if it's razor.
Well, I mean, the idea is that if you are putting yourself in a spot where you've had to check fold a flush draw, you've probably made a mistake. So, as a general rule of thumb, don't put yourself into those spots. Right, check folding flush draws on the unpaired boards.
What? How would you?
Well,
what kind
I mean,
of scenario would that
just bet them yourself, right? So like, like say for example, like bet, call, right? Bet, call, check, pot, right? Still, all the flush draws are going to continue with the rare exception of these really weak ones, really weak ones. Right, but otherwise they're always calling, right? So even if you just had a general heuristic to always continue with a flush draw, right? Yeah, you're still doing okay. Like here, if you pot size raise, it's only a mistake of a set of a big blind, and here this is indifferent. So like, yeah, the idea is to not put yourself in spots where you fold flush draws.
So if we bet the turn instead, and we got raised, then we might have to start folding some. Is that what you're saying by betting them ourselves?
So if you like if let's say you bet and he jams on you and like you just don't have the odds to call a flush draw, you have to fold, right? But that's not going to happen that often, right?
Right.
So
I was
let's
just wondering, like,
yeah.
like how you could screw up earlier to make it so that you'd have to fold some of these flush draws.
Yeah, so say for example you had like somehow had 10-2 of whatever, so 10-2 of spades, and then you check it, and then you face a bet here. This is what we have to fold, right? Because the 10 oh no, yeah, the 10 high is not good enough. 10 high flush draw.
I see.
Right, so the mistake then would have been like you shouldn't have checked it here. You should have bet it.
That makes sense.
Right, I mean, there's the obvious exception where like if they jam into you, then if you don't have odds, then you can fold. But like when there's enough stack depth behind, try to not put yourself into spots where you're going to be folding flush draws. And like here, for example, 4-3, the 4-3, the 4 high flush draw here, right? Like that's very rarely going to raise the flop, right? Because if you raise the flop, you're going to be putting yourself into spots where you have to fold the flush draw on a later straight. Right, if you,
right.
Even though the 4-3 is also a gut shot, but it's just 4 high, so you're going to end up having a 4 high flush draw on the turn or whatever, and then like you're either going to have to always bet it, and it's not very comfortable for you, or if you check, you basically have to check fold. So like try to not put flush draws in spots where you might have to fold them. When there's low.
So like the mistake you can make with a flush draw that makes it so that you can't call with them is by putting it in the wrong range on the flop, for example.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's that, and putting a wrong range on the turn, right? So once again, decision to either check call it or bet it, right?
So a hand like Jack 8 of spades, where you got something else along with the draw.
You got a
the
double
flush
gutter.
draw, they could probably be played more aggressively, like raising instead of calling when you have that something else with it. Like
if you have jack 8 of spades,
or gutter and the flush draw, as opposed to just a weak flush draw with nothing else going on.
If you have jack 8 of spades, I think it'd be similar to 8-5 spades here. He'll check, he'll bet pot, and you jam.
Yep, fairly straightforward. All right, let's go to the next one. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of spots where we're talking about flush draws and stuff, so we'll keep going. All right, instead of checking, we bet now. So we bet they call, and then we check and then they pot it. All right. So don't try and fold flush draws. Let's think about this.
So if you don't want to fold flush draws, then you got to fold jack 8.
Yeah.
No. So in all seriousness, like jack 8 just it doesn't really have 8 outs. It has 6 outs, kind of. Like the spade outs not with your flush with your straights not always gonna be good yet. But like I didn't just mean that as a
just
joke.
about
I
to
actually
say
didn't
the
mean
jack 8's got to be the fold.
Well, I mean, no, it makes sense. If you don't fold your flush draws, you have to fold something.
Okay, so now you got to think about how to play, right? The other flush draws.
Okay, now you were saying about putting the flush draws in the right ranges and not making mistakes with them.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Can I transpose that to like the 8-5? Though probably wants to bet the turn. Doesn't want to check call to be in the check calling range.
Why is that? Just curious.
Well, because like I said, it has that extra thing going on. It has that really good gutter.
Right, gutter and 2 pair.
Yeah,
fair.
Right. So that hand could be in the range that the bets the turn, where something like ace-6 could check the turn but raise, right? And then like check raise, it's better for check raising in that range. And
Because it has the ace high.
and the queen 5 could just be the call. Like ace 6 would be a good check raise.
Okay, so remember on this board exactly on the queen with the queens. I think it's question 2.
5. I think.
Do you guys remember that we would have bet queens
want
ourselves?
to check raise, doesn't want to check call, so it's better to bet.
Which hand do you want to bet?
8-5.
And
you mean on the turn you want to bet it yourself?
Yeah. Bet.
What about
bet the turn with 8-5?
Do you remember queens? How would
check raise the turn with a6 and just
wasn't
call?
with queens the last one was? Didn't we check raise the flop?
No, we would have bet. So yes, but
we check raise the flop with queens, right? And then
so
we always barrel
queen
on
5
the...
is also 2 pair. So it's 2 pair and
Yeah.
the flush draw.
I think queen 5 is going to want to bet it bet yourself on the turn.
So here queen 5 is 2 pair and the flush draw.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the hand with queens, we check raise the flop, so it's not exactly the same.
It's not exactly the same. Okay,
so isn't queen 5 strong enough to be just in the calling range here?
Well, queen 5 is super strong.
Because it has the top pair?
It's 2 pair.
Yeah, 2 pair.
So you want to check call queen 5?
I think the solver says that as when you have a lot of equity, you should bet. You should bet. Just bet as much as you can.
So
I'm just not sure if it's just so strong that we just check raise instead of betting. So that's something to think about.
Well, villains already put money in on the turn, right? So with the queen 5, we can call that, and if the river doesn't come a spade, we're still really good.
Well, Willie, let's just. What are you trying to figure out? What's not in the range?
With the ace, if we check with the idea of check raising.
So let me like just spell out my thoughts because we're trying to figure out what's not in the range,
if we
right?
hit the flush.
Yeah, not what's not in the range.
Okay, so ace 6, when we bet the flop and then he calls, like ace 6 has a little bit of showdown value if it goes check, right? Let's say we bet the flop.
That's where my head is with this one.
So I'll just spell out everything, right? So you bet the flop, half pot, he calls. Then if it goes check, ace high might be good, right? Has some showdown value. I think it has a little bit. Okay. So I think ace 6 can definitely check the turn. Now, what do you do with 8-5? I think 8-5 can also
like with the pot size bet on the turn, would we want to call 8-5?
Well, we're trying to figure out what's not in the range.
Spades? I mean, we could, but it's kind of yucky.
Well, we're trying to figure out what's not in the range.
That's why I'm thinking it's the bet. Because we don't want to have that mistake of having to call a bet then fold.
I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to figure out. So what's your conclusion for what's not in the range?
All right, so is having a 5 important?
Yes.
In what way?
If you check, they probably check a 5.
Good. So what does that mean?
You want to, with your queen 5, you block that, so you want to check raise them.
Yep. So with queen 5, blocking a 5 is good for you. And with 8-5, blocking a 5 is bad for you.
Right.
All right, because if they got the 5 of spades, they've probably got a hand that's going to be checking back. Right, so if we block that, then it's more likely they're going to be betting into us. All right.
Right.
So this particular hand, like getting bet into. We know that queen 5 does, but does ace 5 does? Does ace 5 like getting bet into?
No.
Doesn't love it.
or not as much. That makes a lot of sense. Queen 5 you can check raise, but so you incentivize to check, but 8-5 you still only have bottom pair. And then you have the draw, but still bottom pair. So when you face a bet, you're not as happy. So you bet that instead. And you also have the extra, like the other gutter for when you go in the bet line.
Yeah, so when we're considering whether we want to bet 8-5 or check it, right? Checking means that they're going to be betting into us more than we'd like. But if we bet it ourselves, we can get our lands to fold. Particularly just, 2 overcards. That's kind of nice rather than going check.
Right.
And also we can get called by a flush draw if your opponent does have a flush draw. Right, and we're actually ahead of all the flush draws because we've got a pair. So then if it goes brick, it'll check and they'll be checking back their flush draws. So when they've got a flush draw, we get a pot size worth of value out of it if we pot it here on the turn. So here the 8-5 is not within.
So 8-5's not in range because we wouldn't check it.
Yeah, you never check it. I mean, here
Makes sense.
Queen 5 wants to check because blocking the checkbacks is kind of nice.
I'm guessing Queen 5's the raise, and then A6 is just the call then.
You think the hand is here strong enough to raise?
Yes.
Why do you think that?
Well, we do have top and bottom, I guess, which is like one of those two pairs we would like to play in practice, but we also have the flush draw, so all those turns are no longer bad for us.
I think Queen 5 just makes an excellent call because, so the ace-6, like once he bets pot, right? The ace high flush draw is no longer good, so you want to raise it as a semi bluff. And then the Queen 5, like if he bets pot, Queen 5 is fine, and then if you hit the flush, you can, it's got lots of options when it calls. Ace-6 though, like if you just call this bet with ace-6, every time it bricks, you're just check folding. Whereas if you raise,
I think a6 is like, it's making money in both. Just if it's making more in the raise.
Yeah, like so if you raise to like 30 big
that's
blinds,
not like a particularly.
So I think ace-6 makes a particularly good raise because if you raise, you block a lot of his continue. Because if you raise him, then he's gonna fold, or he's gonna.
I think it's just that you
draws.
want to inflate the pot with hands that can make the nuts type argument.
I mean, Queen 5 if a spade hits, or if Queen or 5 hits, it's also the nuts.
Yep. So here, I mean, if a flush hits, that's nice. If a 5 or a Queen hits, that's even better. But if a 9 or a 7 hits, it's not so good.
Yeah, so you need to wait in order to make sure the runout's good with Queen 5.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because there's not so many runouts. So that's like 6 cards. And then 6 cards, and then like
you'd be surprised what 6 cards can do. I mean, if you think about this hand, think about your other Queen X, right? Queen 7 is difficult to see how Queen 7 even gets here. Queen 9 will probably raise, right? Because it's not so scared of a 7 or a 5, because it's still top 2.
I do remember something
about
that.
And then the remainder of your Queen X is just like Queen 2 flush draw, like Queen Jack, Queen 10 offsuit, that kind of crap. And yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Calling also makes sense.
Yeah, like Queen 5, like it just got, depending on like. It's a card that you're going to want to know the river before you decide how much money you want goes in the pot, right? So, like if it comes a brick, like you don't want to get all in, but you could probably, like either bet yourself or have him bet and you call or something. Like it's still like a nice 2 pair. And then if a flush hits, like you're pretty happy. If nothing hits, Queen 5 is still pretty good. Like there's lots of things that happen with Queen 5. So you're going to want to make sure the 9 or 7 don't hit. But the ace-6, it just needs to make sure that like there's not enough good runouts. Or there's not enough like rivers that are good enough for it that you can afford to just call and then hope.
I don't think that actually makes sense, because a6 is definitely profitable as a call as well. So
Of
the
course.
argument would have to be that it's better as a raise.
Right.
Not
So
that calling isn't good.
when you raise with a6, like you get your fold equity when he folds, right? You just pick up the pot, and then the a6 is fine. And if it gets called, then you can hope to hit your spade or your 8, right? So it's the exact definition of a semi bluff, right?
Yeah. No. Okay. I guess queen, like these top and bottoms, your call EV is just so high.
Yeah. No, because so a6 has
what does the raising.
Here it is. If you call, a6 has no showdown value if you don't hit. Queen 5 does.
Mm-hmm.
So queen 5 call, a6 raise.
So I knew, like, if we had queen 5 without the flush draw, for sure it would just be calling. I just wasn't sure what the impact of having the flush draw on top would if it would make it strong enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so over here, this display method. I mean, there's not actually a lot of a6 like here, almost always. Bets 0.31%, so I probably should have made it a little bit more easy for you guys. Yeah, I mean, queen 5 often bets, but sometimes checks with the intention of just calling. Alright.
Uh-huh. So what was that? A6 is not really in the check range, is what you said?
Yeah, it's not there very often,
Uh-huh.
but it's there a little bit more often than the 8-5 is. Whereas a5 is never in there, but a6 is in there sometimes. Sometimes it's just going to go check, and then you can win with ace high, which is the main idea, right? You bet your nut flush draw on the flop, right? Especially like with the stronger flush draw, the king, ace jack, ace 10, you can go check, and then you can win the river with your ace high, ace 10 high, ace jack high. They're a little bit ace 6 high and ace 8 high, but these hands will bet at a very high frequency.
So the reason that you bet, or that you check, the reason that you check your ace king and your ace jack is like they just have too much showdown value that they might just be good.
Yeah, those hands are probably just good.
Yeah.
Okay, question then. So like, having the 5, like 8-5 is obviously stronger than ace king in terms of showdown value, right? Or maybe not. Maybe that's not even true. But is it the fact that we blocked the 5 with a weaker showdown value hand that makes us want to bet ourselves instead?
The idea was because we blocked the 5 and we don't want to get bet into.
Right. Okay.
Right. You can say the same thing about all of these 5x hands. This is a 6-5.
Right. I was just thinking if we were going to argue for like ace king.
Those hands are just a bit too weak. But like 6-5, 8-5, 10-5, right? They're fairly strong, and they don't really want to get bet into. 5-4, 5-3, they're not that strong. Right, they're not particularly strong, so they can't really bet themselves for value. But I think a5 can.
So wait, with 8-5,
really.
With 8-5, our hands strong enough to bet, but also when checking when we do check, like if we were to check, we're not particularly happy facing a bet.
Yeah, so like this hand is a semi bluff in the purest sense of the word. You bet, you get called by worse, you fold out better. Yeah, I mean there is a difference between semi bluff and draw bluff, right? I think what Marcus was talking about was a strong draw bluff. I think the definition of semi bluff in the one that I have in my book is a bluff with a hand. It's a bet with a hand that can get called by worse and fold out better hands. So like here, a5 does that very well. So like here, if you pot it, a lot of the stronger 5x is going to fold. Right, 6 is going to fold, 8 is going to fold. Even some 9x is going to fold with Jack 9 there, obviously 7x, right? So it gets better to fold and it gets worse to call, right?
So you have
draws.
draw bluff. You have draw bluff as a hand with equity, but without showdown value. But then semi bluff.
Yeah. So like if we look at the value calculator, you guys tried this yet? This is fun. What's our flop? 9 spades. This is actually doesn't work with the turn, so we'll just have a look at it anyway. 7 of spades, 5 of diamonds. What kind of range can we put in? Haven't got it working yet, so that you don't have to like. Anyway, so queen head. Let's look at this possibly. Still 9 in there. Interesting. All right. That's wider than I thought. Anyway, well done. Let's say, for example, 9s, top set. What do we have to do top set? It's going to take a while. 89% valor, 88.73. Now compare that to, say, the 8 of spades, 5 of spades. $75, $72, and then like ace of spades, 6 of spades. All right, so you can see for the other two, like the value was quite close to the equity. Here you've got a bit more of a gap, and like on the turn you're gonna have a bit even more of a gap. So let's go with 4 and 3. Yeah, 4, 6. I'm going to have a fair bit of gap here. Yeah, there's a gap of like 14, 15, 13, 14% there. All right, so there's a fair gap between valor and equity. The more that the hand is obviously a draw, right? So this hand is quite obviously a draw, right? So it's obviously a draw bluff. But like ace-6, not necessarily true that it's obviously a draw. If you narrow the ranges, then yeah, ace-6 will be obviously a draw bluff, and then 8-5 is still going to be a semi bluff. In terms of
but when the range is wider, the ace high can just win.
Yeah, ace high can just win, right? So that's why like the ace, like ace of spades, king of spades, is going to have value very similar to its equity, right? Value, the way this is calculated, is always going to be higher than equity, but the gap is basically how strong the draw is, right? So that was a bigger gap than I thought it was. Ace king, so that basically means that the king x and ace x is also a strong draw as well, right? So drawing to an ace or a king against this range is fairly strong in terms of its draw strength, right? So when the gap isn't so high, so for example, like king 5, there's not going to be too much of a gap between king of spades, 5 of spades, and its equity. The 4% gap there. So that 4%
Does it make sense
comes from the king probably.
Does it make sense to take out a lot of the junk, the suited junk in the range, in the villain range?
Yeah, I mean, we yeah, I haven't updated this yet, but it needs to be updated so that we can do that. Anyway.
Can I ask a question, Thomas, about that?
About what? This?
The valor calculator, yeah. The inputs was the range and the board and the hole cards.
Yeah. And the flop.
So how does, like, for valor, shouldn't stack depth and position be taken into account?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to come up with a different equation for that to calculate it.
Oh, okay. Okay. And does the
So
valid
this is stack depth. This is valor without stack depth. When I put in stack depth, I'm gonna have to figure out a way to calculate it because I haven't actually come
And
to,
is that
to a conclusion that I like.
is that valor percentage related in any way to pot share?
So this is going to be a little bit more close to what your EV is going to look like. I mean, there's you can tell the difference between whether a hand is the draw component of a hand by the gap between its valor and its equity here. Right, so like how much the hand is going to win based on it drawing to a stronger hand and then value betting versus it just checking down. So like for example, if we just look at Ace of Hearts, 5 of Hearts, or even like 7 of Hearts, 5 of Hearts, right? Against this range, there's not going to be too much difference between the equity and the valor, right? And that's because like there's only like a 1% difference. That's because like 7 of Hearts, 5 of Hearts can't really draw to a stronger hand. It's already almost as strong as it can be, right? Versus the other hands that you chuck in, it's going to have a bit of a gap between the equity and the valor because it can draw to something stronger.
Does position have
like the 5 of spades there? It's going to be a little bit different, I guess. Instead of the 5 of hearts.
Yeah. It's the same as we put 7 hearts, 5 of spades.
Does position have?
I have a question about the quiz thing.
So. Anyway,
I'll wait.
Let's not worry about that. This valor calculator isn't complete yet, but it will be at some stage. Do you want to?
But can I have a question here?
Yeah.
The thing that's probably makes me a little bit confused is the line when we bet and then we check. But if you take this in practice in real world, and you look at if you go to the number 1 there on the turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here it's actually betting quite a lot, and we have those 4 type of hands. Do you use like an RNG here to decide what size you want to check?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell the difference. Like, the certain hands will bet for a different size. The sim, while it's enormous.
Let's take the hand we were talking about here. Was it Queen 5, King 5?
Was it 82 gigabytes? I mean, the sim is 82 gigabytes, so it probably could have put a 75% size here. But like, if you want to simplify and put it to 75, you're probably not going to be punished too hard for that.
Too much of a difference.
But the idea is that here you got kings and nines being very different, right? In terms of what they can do. Like nines always bets half pot and kings always pots it, right? And if you don't have that kind of variation in the way that you're playing, then it is a bit easier for you to
I like the idea to having multiple bet sizes, but the thing that's really got me off was that I also have G2 Plus, and it also checks some of the times. Like the king hand is never checking, but if you go down, it starts checking some of the hands and some not, and to know where how to play that type of situation, and this is the only way I think RNG comes in play, where you have to roll the dice to see what your action is. Or can you do it like 100% with these type of and 100% of that?
Ubar, do you know about the 50% rule?
I read it on your site, but in what way?
Like, do you have a bit of understanding about the implications of it?
Take me through it fast. I mean, what I'm asking is that, like I wanted to do a polarized range. Let's say I use 77 and 33, and a check, which means that I always want to bet the biggest size polarized with the big draws and the big hands. But when I look at the solver, it says it gives you the option of actually the 3 ones. It uses them at a certain frequencies for sure. Like some of the hands are mostly betting big, but they also uses a check or small bet.
So you're asking a
And
question about
is
mixing?
something-
Yeah, I mean you can mix with
Yeah,
RNG.
the mix
You can
strategy.
like in practice you can just decide to choose one or the other if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Like if you have some information about your opponent, you should always choose one or the other. If you have enough information, but if you don't, then you can just flip coins, or you can put whatever percentage in that you want, add RNG to make yourself a little bit less, a little bit more removed from what you're doing.
Because there you have the balance strategy or mixed strategy where you actually in game theory gets to the null sum game, getting to Nash equilibrium versus a player that also plays GTO for sure. But
Yeah, I
you
mean,
actually
he split
mix
between
your
half pot and pot is going to get you a bit closer to the equilibrium
Yeah.
position. It's not the equilibrium position. So what we're looking at is
Yeah.
now.
So the question was really, can I actually like make it so it's 1 and a 0, like check or a bet?
Yeah,
and put
there's
the
nothing
EQs
wrong with
that
doing
way?
that if you have enough information about your opponent. If you don't,
Okay.
then like your opponent is not going to be able to exploit you based on the one hand that they play against you.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you start always doing one thing with one hand, with one type of hand, then you can either show some information, or if you know something about your opponent that would allow you to decide between either going half pot or pot or something else, and then you choose to ignore the information, then you're just willingly sacrificing EV for no reason.
By using one size all the time.
Yeah, using one size all the time probably sacrifices EV by a lot. What I'm saying like is if you're using one size for every hand. So like instead of splitting your range between half pot and pot, you just do everything that bets into 75. That probably loses a lot more EV against the opponents that you're playing against than sometimes then picking the hand, and then if it's 50-50 or whatever like this, you choose one or the other.
Yeah, okay.
Because like here, example with kings with the spade or aces, right? Like it likes to pot it, right? It likes to always pot it. So there's a definite EV drop if you go from pot to half pot, right?
Yeah, but
difficult
that's
to
what
see
you have
here.
to learn the frequencies in certain boards, certain position. Yeah, he doesn't really know what's in and out.
Yeah, I mean once you have a fairly good intuition about the game, you can decide which hands do what size. Right. So once you get enough of an intuition about the game, you would think, nines here blocks a lot of his stuff, so I'm going to go half pot instead of pot, right? Because pot doesn't really make too much sense.
Yeah.
Right. Compared to
the
different
question
size.
here is, I play on the Zoom pool, which means that they are also unknown to me, and I am unknown to them. So I could actually be a little bit easy with my game and just put one size. But that also means that I don't know anything about the opponent, and I should probably mix it because I don't have the reason to deviate since I don't know the player. I only know the pool, but yeah.
What I'm saying is you can't put these two sizes into one size and retain your EV.
Okay.
But what you can do is you can pick a hand that's in between and then pick one size or the other all the time, and then you would expect to have the same EV.
Sorry, like if you merge those two sides into 3/4, you would take a big hit.
If you merge these two into one and then always do 3/4 with whatever, you would lose more EV than if you just pick one or the other with the hand that's in between. So like here, Queen 3, for example, going bet check bet pot, bet half pot, or check. Like if you just pick one of them, right, you would have the same EV. But we can't do that with kings. Your kings loses EV if it goes half pot, and nines loses EV if it goes pot.
So what you're saying is that if you were to simplify your strategy, you'd rather first simplify by removing the mix rather than removing the bet size.
Yeah, so it's better to have less mixing and more bet sizes than the other way around. Again, when you're playing against like humans. Yeah. So like when I got king C, I'm always gonna pot it, and here nines I might always half pot it, right? Instead of mixed nines, we can check and bet. Right, so then I've got two sizes, and if I had another size, if I had small over bet, I might pick a hand to go in there all the time, rather than just putting everything into 75. Of course, it makes it more difficult because you still have to know how to play on the river, given those different sizes. Anyway, let's go to the next question. Okay, this one. So against a half pot bet on the 4 to a 4 to straight.
Well, I know we're not folding our flush draw.
Do we want to figure out what's not in the range first?
Yep, so it's on
Do
range.
we bet call or do we check call?
We
Bet. Do we bet?
We bet
Bet,
and then
and
he
then-
called and then we checked.
Yeah.
So which one of these is not within the range?
I think king 7 would bet the turn.
All right. Why?
I would say the most hands that's not in the range is king 7, because I know he likes to bet second pair with a good kicker, and ace is better kicker than king. Flush draws he doesn't fold, over pairs.
Sorry.
But
Okay.
yeah, why would hero?
What is?
Yeah, we should have jacks there. So
Wait. What is? Okay. So we like betting the second pair, but what does that have to do with king 7?
because it has a lower kicker than the ace.
So what you mean we don't bet on the flop?
Yeah,
There's definitely mixing on the flop. Definitely mixing on the flop.
No, we bet the flop. I think we bet the turn too with king 7. I think king 7's not in the range because of that.
So can you give a reason why you bet king 7 but not a7? Like I think you're right, but like you need a reason for it. It's just not like instead of just like yeah. What's your reason for it?
And it doesn't block the ace. Like it doesn't block what you want villain to be floating with.
You think if you bet, he's gonna call an ace?
No, I think he's saying that villain floats aces on the flop. So when you bet the king 7, you don't block those hands.
What do you mean aces?
We should bet the king 7 on the turn.
Like again, why? Like why do you bet king 7 but not a7 on the turn?
Well, the obvious difference is that one has an ace and one has a king.
Yeah, I think we don't want to block villains ace high floats.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty correct. So when we bet half pot on the flop, like he has a lot, like he'll have a lot of ace high in his range, right? So when we have an ace, we block that portion, and that would fold. Like if we bet like let's say half pot on this turn, then he would
So
fold an ace.
what we're
But
saying
we
is that
block-
when we bet king 7 on the flop here, we're just always betting it on the turn as well.
I think so on this turn card.
So like on this turn card where we have a lot of sixes. Is that why? Because usually we wouldn't be going too crazy with the middle pair, right? So just curious about. Is it a property that when you start betting like this middle pair on the flop and then you get one of these turns where you have a lot of your hands improved to straight? Do we even have that many 6-6? If we do, then the king 7 just too low in our range now.
This might be something. He has ace 6, but he doesn't have ace 7. Or sorry, he has ace 6. He doesn't have king 6, right?
Why does he not have king 6?
It's not in his range.
Oh, you mean offsuit? Okay.
Yeah.
I personally think neither of them are, like, both of them are in the range probably. I think both the 7s are in the range. So I'm thinking that like another hand is not within the range.
No, I think you can bet the flop and check the river. I mean, check the turn with the jacks. With the queen 2,
Raise.
flush draw.
Raise.
And the ace 7. Could check them all. But the king 7, because it doesn't have the ace and it has the pair. I just don't think it ever wants to check there. It wants to protect.
What?
I don't think, like, we can't just say like we want to protect this hand, like the second pair hand. Like, it's too weak, I think, to just.
Well, it's too weak to check call, right?
What, king
like
7?
Check call in king 7 would be gross. So it's like that other question. I think king 7's one of these 4 hands where it's better that we bet the turn, because I don't mind check calling or raising with jacks, or especially with queen 2 of spades. I don't know about the ace. I don't know about the ace 7.
Maybe let's do this in a different way, right? So I'm pretty confident that. So okay, I think everyone can agree that jacks.
But yeah, I don't mind check calling or check raising.
Okay, so let's just assume that we got here
with all
about
the a7, but the king 7, I don't want to check call. So that's why I think it's got to bet the turn, and that's why it's not in range.
But ace 7 would check fold too. Like you're not giving, or I'm not hearing like a difference between king 7 and ace 7.
And based on the same thinking, I think the queen to the flush draw is probably the raise. The jacks is the call. And even though it feels weird, ace 7 is probably just fold.
Okay, wait. So if we're folding ace 7 and kings, like ace 7 to the bet, anyways.
Yes.
Then
I don't see it. Yeah. Like so. Okay.
I guess ace 7 has more EV in the check line. So I mean that would be a reason.
Okay. Let's pretend. That we get here with all that we do all these things, right? that all four of these hands are in this spot. Let's pretend. Then how would we answer? Right? We said Queen Deuce would raise because, like as a draw bluff or a semi bluff. Jacks would call, and then A7 and King 7 would both check.
So
fold.
wait. Just curious. So in I guess the other example we had, it was we check raise the flop, and then we face the pot. We check and face the pot on the turn, and we called King 3. So I mean, pretty and different board texture, obviously too. But
okay, I'll just provide something.
Yeah, I mean, raising makes sense.
So let's say with all four of these hands, we bet the flop. He called. And we check.
Do you like raising the queen too?
Yeah, I like to raise the queen too and call the jacks. Now, A7 and King 7, one of them will fold. One of them is not. One of them will they would both fold, right? So,
because I admit I'm having a hard time wrapping my head fully around the difference between the King 7 and the A7.
Right. So if you don't know the difference between the King 7 and the A7, you have to tell me why you want King 7 not in the range, A7 in the range.
Wait, is it not possible that like Queen Deuce is just one of those flush draws that always bets? It does exist. Because like to me, it seems like more likely that probably both Ace and King 7 are in the range, but one of them calls, the other one folds.
You want to?
I was gonna say that maybe jacks are not in the turn range because he checks it. The hero checks, and you're blocking Jack 10 and all the stuff you should be betting probably.
Yeah, I was thinking one of those two hands. I'm not quite sure which exactly. I would never check.
So the turn play is revolved around the straight.
Which two were those?
The non 7x two hands. Like jacks and queen deuce.
Oh, so you don't think that A7 would check?
No, I think probably both Ace and King 7 would be in the check line. So neither of them fit within the not within range box. Is what I'm thinking. Rather than one of them is not within range and the other one is within range because of some differences between the Ace and the King.
So Owen, if they're both within the range, you're gonna need to.
I'm thinking one of them is. I think one of them is calling, one of them is folding. And another one of those, like jacks or queen deuce, is not within range. So like I think probably something like jacks is not within the range or something. Queen deuce is the raise. King 7 is like a fold, and A7 is a call, something like that.
So why would you call A7 and then fold King 7?
I agree.
There's no difference.
The flush is definitely the raise. Queen 2 is the raise.
Yeah, but I agree, but let's just still try and figure out what's not in the range and why.
Well, is it? Oh.
All right, so I'll give you guys these two.
Yeah. So we need to figure out why.
So King 7 is not within range because it always bets the turn, and A7 always checks the turn. And I think it has to do with blockers.
Okay, so tell the blockers and what they do. So tell me what the blockers do.
Is it having the ace blocker that makes the A7 wanna check the turn? And unblocking the ace make the King 7 wanna bet the turn?
Wait, so I'm thinking with the ace, we block the ace highs, so when we check, we're gonna face bets slightly more often, which we don't want.
That's right.
Which ace size are you talking about? After you bet the flop and they call.
All right, I think I've got it. So a lot of his floats on the flop are going to be ace high, right? So when if you were to bet ace 7 on the flop, you're blocking his folds that you want him to fold. Whereas king 7, you're not blocking his folds.
I guess I don't really like it.
Does everyone else agree? I mean,
so I'm looking at the big blind versus.
Does the king 7 bet because it has more chance that it gets floated by ace x hands without a pair that the villain has?
So I'm looking at the
Like we want villain to have. We rather villain had that ace and some rag.
So we definitely want, when we're betting here with ace 7 or king 7, we're looking for folds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which one you're going to get more folds with? Well, if you have the ace, then you're blocking his fold of all the ace high stuff. Like I'm looking at his range right now, right? And if he has ace 10 off or ace 9 off, especially like let's say he has ace 10 or ace 9 or ace 8 with, or like sorry, ace 10 or something like that with a spade on the flop. Or that's a bad example. Let's say he has like a lot of his if he has ace jack with a spade, right? He's going to call the flop. Yeah.
Okay.
And then he's going to
yeah, but it makes sense. He has so many aces that he floats on the flop, and if you have the ace, he shouldn't have a lot of those ace x.
Well, he'll have less.
King 7, yeah. So
yeah.
You don't block his folding range. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and you want to unblock his fold.
Yeah, pretty much. I think.
Yeah.
Good says it's not in range. This one's fold. Yeah, let's have a look. So this is somewhat counterintuitive. Yeah, this is the betting range, like quarter pot. A lot of the time, there's the queen 7, always bet. And a7 checking most of the time. Now, the difference between these hands is, these kinds of hands is fairly subtle, but it's got to do with the check back range, combination of the check back range and the folding range. So if you have an ace, right, if you check, you block their bets with their ace high bluffs, right? So you're more likely to just be able to see the river, and then check down. But if you have a king, you end up blocking.
How does the flop see? The flop with
Yeah,
ace 7?
so after it goes a7, yeah.
Yeah,
Is
it's
this
a
what you're talking
small
about?
bet sometimes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not bad all the time.
The ace 7 bets more often, but it doesn't bet that often on this.
Yeah, I mean they're all going to mix. I mean if you want to do one thing or another, that's fine. What was it on? Yeah, so it's got to do with the blocker, whether they're an ace or a king. Okay, so if you got a king, you end up blocking the hands which they would check back, namely this king queen offsuit, which none of you guys talked about, but the big one has got a bit of king queen offsuit, and some other king x hands. So you end up blocking checks and unblocking bets, right? When you've got a king, versus if you've got an ace, you end up blocking bets, right? All the ace high floats that would have, all the ace high hands that would have called the flop to float are now going to be bluffing the turn because they're actually very weak. Right, so all those ace high floats are now going to be bluffing into you. So if you've got an ace, you end up blocking those. So like you can comfortably check fold, but because you block those bets, you're more likely going to be facing against a weaker hand, right? You know, like if you've got a7, you're more likely to be up against like 5-3 or something, right?
So is it because we have the 4 straight that we start bluffing our second, or I guess third pair now?
Yeah. So when you've got the 4 to a straight, right? The very weak hands, like the weakness of the hands change, right? The strength of the hands change. So
Yeah.
like here, these weak pairs become fairly weak, right? King 7,
Right.
Queen 7. They don't have any other draw, right? So they're just being bluffed now. I mean, you've got a lot of other hands as well, but like those hands might want to also bluff the river if it goes check. These unmade hands are betting at a fairly high frequency, except for the king queen there. Right, some hands are just going to check folding, some hands are going to be checking to try and see the river and then trying to draw that way. Like for example, king queen, like it looks alright, but here with the king spades or the queen of spades, if you bet and they call and then your king or the queen comes, your hand is very rarely good. If you check, they're going to be able to bluff it off you. On the other hand, if it goes check and then your king or the queen comes, then maybe you can even go for a small bet for value on the river. Like, so say for example, we bet check and then like the queen of clubs comes, right? There you go. You can go for a 3 big blind bet there. It's a 6 big blind bet there. Half pot to quarter pot. Bet with the king queen, right? But if you go bet call and then the queen comes, a little bit less so, right? Not quite as nice. Although all the queens do still bet quarter pot. Anyway, what was I going with this? Yeah, king 7, queen 7. All right. Obviously, they can outdraw two of the stronger 2 pairs than 9x 2 pair. Yeah. So the main difference there is that here, if you bet quarter pot with your 7x, the king 7, it ends up being a semi bluff, not a draw bluff, a semi bluff. You end up folding out a little bit of stronger hands. You got a7 folding, or a king 7, the chop folding, right, and then also getting called by worse, right? You get called by obviously the flush draws, and even some of the weaker pairs will call you as well. All right, so like king 7, even though like its ranking is relative rank is fairly strong. Compared to the other 7x, right? But its draw strength isn't. Like a 7, while it's the strongest 7x, its draw strength isn't so great. Versus 10-7, it also draws to the stronger straight when the 6 comes. So you've also got the extra gut shot there. Yeah. All right. So some minutia there. All right, next one. So check, bet call, river. All right, any ideas? I mean, this should be a fairly straightforward one. All right, so which of these is not within range?
So what's the action on the turn?
Check, bet half pot call, and then we're on the river.
All right, I think I've got stuff. So Jack 9 is not within the range, and the reason is it's not going to bet the turn.
Okay, this is the new part of the quiz, I think. The one that comes out to me is the Jack 9 when the flush completes on the turn is going to check.
Yep.
The 10-9's fine to bet because it just made 2 pair.
Yeah, deuce is good, and the deuces and king 9 have a flush draw. Makes sense.
Good.
Yeah, Jack 9. Yep.
Okay. So I've sorry, but background noise. But so I've seen similarly in these spots, deuces turns into a great bluff because you're not. Because okay, so when you're bluffing, what do you want to do? You want to
So-
unblock this.
I think the 10-9 now becomes indifferent to checking or betting when the ace shows up and the flush completes. I think two pair can check or bet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Deuces are just bluffing.
Yeah, so deuce is going to bluff for a small size. Yeah, 10-9, check or bet, and then king 9 check.
King 9 just...
The twos is a surprise, huh?
Not really. So I've seen it in other questions, right? So the twos
Was a bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah, so the twos don't bluff. So you're going to bet twos for a small size.
So this is one of the things that you when you're on the river and you're bluffing with a hand with some showdown value, you usually put in the biggest size you've got. So like yeah, say for example I've got like a graph here. Trying to draw a graph. Say you're thinking about the equity is up here, and then the strength of the hand is like this, where this is the strongest, and this is 0. Why am I doing it backwards? Because that's how all the equity graphs are. 0 and then 1. Okay, so the strongest hand here, right? And this is like the bet size. So like this is not really 1, but this should be S. Doesn't matter. Bet size getting bigger. So like the strongest hands will bet bigger, and then the hands get weaker, and then weaker, and then weaker, and then they check. Right, either bets very small or they check. And then at some stage down here, you want to start bluffing, right? And then what does a bluffing range look like? Some people might think it looks like this, right? This is wrong. This is the wrong way to bluff, right? The way you should be bluffing is actually like this here. Oops, it's the wrong color. Right, so say this is the bluffing range. So this is your value range here, and this is your bluffing range here, right? Sorry, this graph is wrong. This should look like this. Yeah, there we go. And let's make that a straight line. There you go. Make sense?
Why do you prefer to go bigger with the hand with showdown value?
To try and get more folds from stronger hands. Right. The idea is you want to get folds from hands that are stronger. Right. So if you got no showdown value, right? If you bet small, you end up getting folds with these hands anyway.
Ah, I see.
So like it's hard. It's hard to have messed up when you've got absolutely no showdown value to bet very small, because even if you bet very small, they're very weak hands will still fold, right? And then when you've got some showdown value, right? I mean, you end up beating all those very weak hands. So betting small doesn't really accomplish too much, right? Because you end up just winning against the hands that you would have beat. You're just getting folds from the hands that you would have beat. So you end up you want to get proportionally more folds from stronger hands, right? So say for example you're here, right, and then you fold out like this much by betting small, right? This is the amount that you fold, right? But this is if it's here, then you only win this much compared to this much if you check, right? But if you bet big, then proportionally, like say they fold over here, then you win this much compared to this much when you check. So when you're deciding on like how strong, what sizes you want to use, like generally you should do it like this. Of course, there is a bit more mixing within the hands, but generally hands that are slightly stronger in terms of showdown value will go in the bigger size, and then hands that are a bit weaker will go in the smaller size as a bluff, right? So like if you've got
with these hands with some showdown value, are they going to be always betting, or are they mixing in some checks as well?
Well, I mean, they might mix in checks as well, but I'm just talking about the size that they do, right? In terms of what bet size they're going to make.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, so it's not the other way around, where like the very weak hands bet big. No, it's actually the top of the bluffing range bets the biggest. and I'll show you that go. I'll show you that here. Difficult to see, but say for example the weak pairs. There's the twos. They bet twice the pot. 2, 3s, and 4s will bet twice the pot, and then 4 starts to check. And then in terms of the other hands, right, you can kind of make it out. There's a fair amount of mixing. You can kind of make it out, but the slightly bigger sizes are a bit more towards the left, and then the smaller sizes are a bit more towards the right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. So if you got 2-0 on the river, you should bet twice the pot. Okay. But if you got 4 high, you can get away with betting one quarter of the pot. Right. Even though you feel like 4 high, oh, I want to win the hand and or whatever, but like 4 high makes for a really good bet for 1 quarter of the pot, because like if you can get 6 high to fold, right, that's really nice for you. Even though 6 high is gonna bet into you if you check, but if you get 6 high to fold, that's nice. Okay.
What 4 high do you have?
4-3.
Don't you just fold?
I mean, if a 4-3 here was a gut shot.
No. 1 sec.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anyway, next one.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Betting
All right.
raised.
Can't imagine we're betting this flop with Queen 10. The no nothings. Like 2 overcards, no backdoor straight, or sorry, no backdoor flush. All the other ones seem better to bet.
Can you scroll it up again a bit? Yeah.
Open call, right?
Bet half.
Out of position. We have give ups, right? We have
I don't particularly see why Queen 10 would, like, we need to have checks. Queen 10 doesn't really make sense.
I agree 100%.
Got nothing going for it.
So Queen doesn't want the
Queen
range.
10,
Good.
not in the range, yeah.
So the question is, okay, I think you're folding ace king. Like just the naked like backdoor flush draw and the 2 overs, I don't think is quite enough, and I'd much rather continue with.
Well, you can't fold the flush draw, so you have to fold the non-flush draw.
Okay, and then now we're deciding between raising and calling. So the 6-3 has the double gutter to like, so the 4 is like, the 4 hits you like basically off the nuts, and you know the 8 is also kind of fine, but the 4-3, if you hit your 6, then you still run into the 8 problem, right? So 6-3 has a lot more, like will do a lot better as a call than 4-3, I think, for that reason. So like half the deck.
Do we raise
improves.
the 4-3 just because it's the weaker one?
Well, yeah. So what I'm saying is that 6-3 will just play better on way more runouts.
Because I think this is counterintuitive, where we call the 6-3 but raise the 4-3.
I would have gone the other way around.
Well, that's what I meant by counterintuitive. Because I would have gone the other way around too.
I don't necessarily think so. I don't think it's counterintuitive.
I
think
blocking.
So on the flop, you don't like you should. I don't.
Okay, so the 6-3 is.
I think blockers are probably not the. Oh yeah, it is blocking straight. I do think probably it's more something to do with how they play on turns and rivers.
Right. So the 6-3, about half the deck is good for it, right? The 9 spades.
So could you say the 6-3 is blocking more draws? So it should be a call. Like it's unblocking things that are going to bet. Where 4-3 really isn't blocking anything except the flush.
The blockers aren't quite as important on the flop.
Yeah, on the flop you don't need to.
As on the later street.
So why, Thomas, is it counterintuitive that 4-3 is the raise and 6-3, which is just 6 high over 4 high,
Well, 6-3 is a stronger draw.
6-3 is a super strong draw, right? Because
Yeah,
the
so
eight-
you guys just have to decide whether the EV of calling is higher than the EV of raising, or vice versa.
So if you have the 4-3, right? Then if you call, then what turns are you happy with?
You know
Just the
what? We
spades.
could, yeah. It's
Right? So
Dude.
the 4-3, all you really have to improve on is the spades. So you, but on the 6-3, you have the 8 and the
we have more equity to continue with
and the
6-3
4. Right. So many more
if we
turns and rivers
call
are good for you.
and see the river.
Right, but I also want to just put more money in the pot when I have a stronger hand.
Yeah,
Well, you don't have a strong hand yet.
Well, yeah, but
Like 6-3 can really benefit from seeing the run out and deciding if he wants to put money in the pot. Whereas 4-3, like it's pretty. It's
I think this is one of those subtle differences.
All right, so think about what happens if you 3-bet and then you get 4-bet.
so if you 3-bet 6-3 and you get
Right.
jammed
We
on,
don't want to get 4-bet with 6-3. We could fold 4-3 if we get 4-bet.
Yep, exactly. Right, so
Right,
that's probably the main reason.
Yeah.
okay.
We got more equity to get blown off of if we raise
jammed on,
the
yeah.
6-3.
Yeah, so like the 6-3 becomes really good as a call with all of its outs, having more than a third of the deck good for it. 4-3 less so. Like the 6 isn't so good and it's a fairly weak flush draw. But like if you just called, right, you're going to be facing a bet on the turn, which is not super comfortable, but a good chunk of the time, right? So then you're going to have to fold the turn, right? So like you're trying to put this flush draw into a line where it folds the least. If you can sort of think about it that way. If you just call, then on the turn you're probably going to fold, aren't you? Against like a pot-sized bet, yeah, because you just got a 4 high flush draw, so you don't want to put it in that line. Yeah.
Pretty funny. You don't want to fold your flush draws, so you try to figure out how to not fold them.
Yeah, how to not fold them. So here, if you raise instead, then you could bet the turn, right? And that way you're not folding it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like you want to put the flush draws in lines where you don't fold them. So this is a call and this is a raise. Like
So
for the same reason, like 6-3, right? The reason why it doesn't want to raise is because if you get 4-bet, you're gonna have to fold. So like you don't really want to put it in that line because you're gonna have to fold against a 4-bet. 4-3, I mean, it kind of sucks, but like anyway. So
How
here
big
the
of a
raise
factor
is
is the
50%.
4-bet versus
Well,
the
I
fact
mean,
that
you get
6-3 just has
4-bet
more runouts?
15-ish% of the time, and there's the 4-bet's basically all in, so
That's quite a bit.
17%
Quite a
of the time, right? So quite a bit. So yeah, like for example, like if you just called, and probably won't have the EV here because it's always going to be do it because like the gap in EV between calling and folding with 4-3 is 0.2 a big blind. But say for example you call and then it's like a brick, and then check pot, right? You're folding some of the flush draws, right? And then obviously 4-3 is going to fold. Yeah. Versus if you 3-bet, you call and then the brick comes, you're always going to be betting. And here this is an all-in size. So you're putting the flush draw, you're putting your flush draws in lines where you don't have to fold them. Either that means you're going all in yourself, right? You've got the aggressive option, or you're going to be comfortably calling it to see the turn. So here the 6-3, right? Like if you call and then the brick comes and then what's going on? 6-3 brick comes, bet raising, and then you donk, okay? With the 6-3 all the time. Right, so once again, putting it in a line where you don't have to fold it. I don't want to have to fold this hand, so I'm going to donk it here, right? Or like
when the deuce comes, you dunk.
Yeah, and when the jack comes, check pot, you jam it, right?
Sorry, why do we dunk on the deuce?
yeah, the reason why you don't want to deuce is because it's probably the worst card in the deck for villain's range, besides like a 9.
Okay,
No, a
interesting.
nine's pretty good too. So it's an absolute brick. So like you end up having more made hands than your opponent by a fair margin. So you can donk very small to try and deny equity from those draws that will have raised the flop.
Oh, it's interesting. I would have thought you don't dunk too much on the bricks, but I guess your range has more showdown value than
Yeah, I mean
or
when
made
the
hands.
board is where you do there's a fair amount of donking on bricks. So like especially when the opponent is quite polar, like in these raise lines, in these bet raise lines, the opponent becomes much more polar than if it just goes
Right.
bet check. And with that polarity, like the number of made hands usually comes from draws, right? So if the draw completes on the turn, it becomes a made hand. But if it's an absolute brick, so if we look at the turn report, and filtering it for checking frequency, like the 2 is checked a lot. So the 2 is donked a lot, 3 is donked a lot, and then the 9 and the 7 are donked a lot as well. Which makes sense. 9's not so good, 7's not so good, and 3s and 2s aren't bricks, so they're obviously not so good either. What else was that? Yeah, was that the one? Oh yeah, Ace King. Yeah, we talked about preference of flush draws than non-flush draws. So yeah, try to put your hands into lines that you end up not folding a flush draw. So if you find you go, this is probably an exercise for you if you want. Go through your database and then make a filter for the times that you folded flush draws, right? On like anywhere on the flop or the turn, whatever, right? And then try to think of a way that you could have avoided that spot, right? And then it was either that putting it into a different line or something, right? Try to think of a way you could have avoided that spot where you folded the flush draw. Obviously, if your opponent does some weird ass shit by just jamming the flop for no reason, then okay, you can fold it. But like if you took a line and then you got to some node where you end up having to check fold or something like that, try to have avoided that.
Thomas, I have a question. Straight draws then?
Well, I mean, it's a bit different. Flush draws are very, very strong. Straight draws are only we saw that you don't fold a flush draw on unless it's a paired board. The straight draw you're probably not going to be folding the open-ended straight draw on an unpaired rainbow board, right? But otherwise there's heaps of straight draws that are just gut shots, and they usually will fold, right?
Yeah, and as soon as the board is two-toned.
Yeah, once it becomes two-toned, then you can start folding some open-ended straight draws at some points. Usually you don't. Same kind of idea with a flush draw, right? You kind of want to avoid folding those very strong draws. If, like, for example, you've got an open-ender with an overcard, which happens like half the time. That is usually enough to want to not fold that hand, right? To not want to put that into a line that you want to fold it, that you're going to fold it. So try to avoid folding strong draws if you can, right? And that includes flush draws, open-enders with an overcard, that kind of stuff, combo draws. Don't put them in lines where you have to fold them. Okay. Yeah, slightly different with the percentages now. So bet, raise, call, donk. So we just talked about the 2. Donk, call, river.
Oh, bet sizing one. That's cool. What are our options? 50%, 25.
50%, 25 pot, and not within range.
Not really pot. Okay.
Sorry.
So I don't think Queen
the
7's a very
size of the
good
pot is
donk.
36, not 12. That's a mistake on my part.
Oh, yeah, so I'm going to say that Queen 7's not.
So I don't see Queen 7 being a good donk on the turn. Even the 8s are a better donk because of the gutter.
The gutter.
9 can donk, Jack can donk. Queen 7 doesn't want to donk. Yeah, I'm thinking Queen 7 is not in the range.
Good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just too middling on the turn here.
I don't see why you can't sort the rest.
And now it's just sizing.
I think you just sort 8s for quarter pot, 9 for half pot, and jacks for pot.
Well, the 8s will bet the smallest.
Yeah, just sort.
So I'm thinking the 8s for 9 big blinds. Hey.
Anyone surprised about that? No, all right, yeah. I mean, after you donk the turn here, they're going to be like having a queen is difficult for them. I mean, having a queen is difficult for both of you, so you can just pot jacks here, right? After it goes donk call rather than donk raise. Jacks is a fairly strong hand, so let's look at it here. This was a decision the river. Like all these 7x don't make it into the turn bet range. Right, well then we just check. Similarly, your pocket 7s checks.
Oh, we
turn a
dog
lot.
half the time.
Yeah, the donking a lot, right? On this too, because it's the biggest of all the bricks, right? 2s and 3s, it's just absolute bricks here. And we discussed already that there's a lot of raising of draws. Okay, so like when the draws all miss, right, you suddenly have a lot of showdown value in your range compared to their hands with no showdown value, right? So here's 32.5% top pair, but if you look at them, their top pair is only 15.7, right? Sure, there's some more straights and 2 pairs and stuff to worry about from them, but it's those hands are going to raise as the same way that they're going to bet, right?
So I actually, with the quarter pot donk sizes, I never could quite figure out what types of hands we like would want to go in that range. I think most of them all end up being like between check and.
Yeah, so a lot of those hands will be indifferent. So if you look at the here, right, you can kind of see a bit of a curve where like the middle is more checked, right? Like and this is the kind of stuff here. So look at the curve again. So like if I draw it like this, right? So once again, this is the strongest hands. All right, and so it kind of looks like this. How do I? Yeah, what? Sorry, this is. No. Is that what I wanted? No. This, and then this goes up all the way here, and this goes down here. That's it. Anyway. Alright, so this is a checking frequency. This is checking frequency. Alright, and this is the mix. So like here's 100%. So above is all going to be bet. There's a line here. Let's draw a line here. And then let's fill this with blue, and then fill this with green. That's not what I wanted. Let's do this. Here. This will make sense in a minute, I'll show, I promise. Okay. Great. Alright, so green is checks underneath it, blue is bets. Right, so you can see like the top middle hands here. So the top middle hands will checking at a high frequency, and the very weakest hands give up at a pretty high frequency. But in terms of the donking for value, the blue is donk, small.
Okay.
Right, this is donk. This is check. So it's the very strongest hands of donk, right? So the stronger the hand is, the more often it donks, and then like the strong, the strongest of the weak hands will bet a bit more often, and then like the middling hands will check. Maybe this curve will look a bit more like this, but yeah, it looks like that probably.
Is the reason the strongest of the weak hands donk again the same reason why we go bigger with
Well, I mean,
Like less of a showdown value?
in your betting range, you want some polarity. Okay,
Yeah.
and maybe there's even a bit of an up curve here, but in your betting range, you want polarity, and so you do that by betting strong hands and weak hands. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The very weakest hand just give up because they're too weak, right? They're too weak to outdraw the calling range after you bet, so you give up with them. The very strongest hands might decide to check raise a fair chunk of the time, so it might not go all the way to the bottom. So these hands here might want to check raise. So here, these hands in the middle will check call, and then these hands at the bottom will probably check raise, and the hands at the very weakest hands will fold, right? But these hands will be betting more often, right? The hands that are towards the bottom but not the very bottom will be betting quite often in the donking range, and we see that kind of here, right? You've got some very strong hands that'll check raise, a lot of strong hands here, strong but not super strong hands here, that'll just donk, and then towards the bottom you got the very weakest give ups, and then some hands that get thrown into the betting range as a bluff here, right? Or you can check call or check raise those hands, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So in terms of the range construction here for the donking size, it's not too different from the pot, from the flop here, right? So the flop, same kind of idea, right? The strongest hands are going to be betting more often, and the weakest hands are going to be betting more often, and then like the very weakest hands just give up. And that's a lot of the case when you're out of position. You're going to have some of the very weakest hands that can't hope to outdraw the calling range. If you'd bet, they would just check and then hope to see the turn card for free by them checking back, and then maybe you can outdraw the checking range, right? So hands that are basically hopeless in terms of outdrawing the betting range will check and then hope to outdraw the checking range by having the opponent check back. So can't outdraw the calling range. So here we're looking at bet raise, call, donk, same kind of thing. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answered your question. Yeah, is there anything I want to look at this?
No, yeah, that was
yeah.
helpful.
Once you get to the river, you just bet different sizes according to the strength of your hand, unless you've got a really good blocker. So none of these hands have particularly good blockers. It was only really Queen 7 that did, but the Queen 7 ended up not being within range anyway. Like for example, if you had the set of 9s here, you'd bet at the same size as King 9, so like you do 50%. Right, so don't call. What was that, a queen? There's a set of 9s there, right? Because you've got some of the weaker 9s that go quarter pot, and some of the stronger 9s that go half pot. You do a coin flip with your set of 9s, a set of 7s, because all your 7x always checks. What else is there? We've got queens. Because some of your top pair can just jam all in. What?
Wait, so 7s is always check raising? Or what's going on there? 7s is always check raising? Is that what's going on?
Queen 10 is 99.4% equity. Sorry? Sorry.
This.
I didn't catch that.
The 7s are just always check raising? Is that what's going on?
Yeah. So here when it goes check, they're going to be checking back all their 7x. So,
oh, okay.
So you block all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after you donk here and then the queen comes, like their range is very, very weak, right? Because their range was fairly polar here, and then the brick comes, you can donk because you've got all those shouting value hands and they don't. You donk and then you don't have some equity. They're going to raise you again with their very strongest hands and then basically call draws. So their ranges is made up of entirely draws here. So like when you've got Queen X, like here Queen 4 is at 99.3% equity, just goes all in. Because you just get called by worse. Alright. Is it the last one? No. Two more. Alright, over this one. Check, check. We bet, call, and then one on the river.
Sixes check? Or sixes is not within the range?
Six is not within the range.
Because they would check the turn for sure.
Why is that?
Because it doesn't want to get raised.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's just because it's got enough showdown value here, so like, yeah, six is not within range. No Ellens.
Can we just sort them? Like,
I think Ace King would check raise.
Why do you think Ace King would check raise? It's like why can't you just sort them? This one bets, this one bet or check, and this one check.
Well, villain's gonna bet with any flush, and we beat it. If we bet, they would call. Oh, if we check, they would bet some weaker hands that we could get that bet in, even if they fold a shove. So we can get an extra bet, I think, by checking the Ace King. Does that make sense?
But why Ace King and not like Ace of Spades check?
oh, because maybe the King X on this four flush or naked King X is just going to check back.
Yep. So the King X checks back, and you block that. Right. So you stop him from checking back. So you're more likely going to get bet into. All right.
So
your check raise are going to be more successful.
raise.
All right. Now the other
Yeah,
two.
makes sense. Bet or better check?
I think
pretty
King
sure.
Queen is indifferent to betting or checking.
Why is
I
that?
think there's a little bit of
It's two pair, but it's not a flush.
so. I think the king
Wait, do we have the? Oh wait, do we have the super nuts with Jack 10? Is that a straight flush?
Yeah,
oh, I just
absolute
realized it's a straight
nuts.
flush.
Absolute nuts. Yeah. So
I didn't notice that. Oops.
I think the king queen will bet for a little bit of value.
I didn't
Top
notice
two
Jack 10.
Yeah,
was,
so
was a
the
straight flush.
Jack 10 we bet because we want our opponent to have an ace, the Ace of Spades.
I don't think that's particularly relevant because when he has the ace of spades, we're going to stack him anyways, right? I think it's more that we don't block the king, we don't block the queen, so that we get called by like two pairs sets, whatever,
Yeah,
or two pairs and one pair. So betting, we pick up that extra value, but then versus like, I mean, ace of spades, we're going to stack
yeah,
either way. So Jack 10, we pick up, we're not blocking the pairs. So we bet and can get called by those hands. King, queen.
yeah.
All right. So yeah, King can bet better check. You can bet fairly small. Here, Jack 10 can pot it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Like here you got the Jack 10, which is the super nuts. But the thing is, that it blocks the Jack X flush and the 10X flush, which will bet if you check. So like you end up blocking a substantial amount of the betting range. So your check raise attempt is going to be less successful than if you just bet it yourself. And if obviously if they've got the ace of spades, you're going to sack that anyway. So might as well just bet and then get called by those weaker flushes as well as some of those two pairs, right? And then if you get raised, you're going all in, and then you basically always stack an ace. Don't know why those ones are folding, but yeah. All right.
So what, that was Jack 10. We get it in, right? I mean,
yeah. So you bet it, and then when you get raised, you go all in.
Yeah, on that folding.
Yeah, and then you end up semi bluffing with the other nut flushes.
Huh.
Although the thing is, it's difficult. It's difficult to actually make your opponent's hand indifferent, right? When you go all in with over their pot size bet. So like here you you pot it, and then they make a pot size raise. All right, so they're repping like the nuts, and some of the second nuts as well. So they're repping the nuts, and so it's kind of difficult to make them indifferent between calling and folding. So you have to do that by sometimes bluffing the third nut flush, specifically like the 10 of spades. And you do that because otherwise the opponent will never call you when they've got the ace, because you end up only ever having the straight flush in your range.
Wow.
Right, because the ace of spades blocks the ace of spades.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I guess when your value range is one combo, you don't really.
Yeah, so the value range is one combo. It's a jack of spades, 10 of spades. Yeah. So right. So when they've got the ace of spades, and they face the all in, what can that be from? That can be from either the straight flush or a bluff. So you have to actually balance that all in with some bluffs that aren't just an ace. All right.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, next time it's difficult to credibly rep a straight flush. I'm not sure I've ever done it. Yeah, I mean, just don't try repping straight flushes and hold them. Anyway.
I mean, I think in practice, if you, if he has the ace of spades and you have Jack 10, they're never gonna, you can never bluff and they're never gonna, probably.
Yeah, I mean that's the issue, is that they're probably never going to fold, and it's probably okay for them to never fold the ace high flush. But actually, when you think about it, they have to fold sometimes. Probably not, because then you can actually bluff with the third nut flush and then get the second nut flush to fold. But if their range is just the ace of spades and then bluffs, then it has to fold sometimes. So it depends on how they've constructed their range. But yeah, don't try and get them to fold by repping one combo. It's probably the main lesson there. The main lesson was bet the nut flush. So it was bet the super nuts, because you end up blocking their checkbacks. That was the main lesson. All right, let's go to the next one. Check, bet, call, and now on the river.
I think when the nines pair on the turn,
Aces are always checked.
the aces especially without a spade, but maybe even with a spade, should check the turn. So yeah, I don't think the aces are in. I think when it pairs, even with a spade, I think it checks.
What's the
Why?
difference in the
Why is
spade?
that?
On the 9, you double block the ace high checkbacks.
Great.
Especially
Yeah,
like
that's exactly right. Because like here, when there's a pair on the board, ace high's got a lot more showdown value. So when you've got aces, you end up blocking their checkbacks with their ace high that's trying to get to showdown. So you're going to be more likely to be facing a bet after you check, right? Which means that if you want to check raise or you want to check call and then check raise river, you'll be able to do that more successfully. So ace is not within range because it always checks the turn. So yeah, watch for that on pair boards.
And then we've got 2 boats and a pair. Remember, there's something about like when we have 9-8, we have pretty strong blockers against like them having like a 9. So we need to bet more ourselves.
Agreed. I agreed 100%. 9-8 should bet.
Uh,
All right, so I think 9-8 should bet. Sevens
Yeah,
should
and then
check.
sevens
7-6
should
can
check.
better check. So sevens.
Yeah,
can,
7 should check. 7-6 is indifferent.
So the reason you check your
Betting or
sevens
checking.
boat, the reason you check your sevens boat is because if he has a 7, he's going to check. So you block the check back range.
Yep, that makes sense to me.
And then
Great. So 7 boat does that. 7 straight does that, and it doesn't do as strongly as 7s. And then 9-8 because you end up blocking his betting range after you check. Right, you might as well bet it yourself. Okay. I'll show you that quickly. This is what it looks like. Basically, all your trips and overpairs will bet. So like when you check, they're always going to be betting their trips. I mean, sure they're going to have straights and stuff too, but blocking all their trips isn't so good. And even down to middle pair, we'll go for some thin value there for the half pot bet. It's about betting an 8 on the paired straight board. Betting top pair on that. And then if you check, like the 7x always checks back, so blocking that is nice for a check raise. Same kind of thing could probably be said about a 5 without the 5 of spades.
Just curious with the aces, when you check and you face a bet, do you mostly check raise on the turn or do you delay it to the?
Yeah, you've delayed to the river. So like here check bet,
Okay.
call, like, and then it's like a brick or whatever. Depends on the bet size. Like here they're weighing twice the pot sometimes. But half pot, you raise on the brick. Pot you raise sometimes. More than pot you just check. More than pot you just call. So yeah, I mean because the blocker is so strong, like you just want to make sure that they don't have an ace left over. So there's all the ace high. Like most of that we'll check back. Some of it will bluff. And some of their hands with ace high, with an ace in it, will be betting the turn and then check back the river as well, because they can't just let themselves be so vulnerable on an ace in their betting range. So like they half pot here and then you call, and then an ace comes, right? You're gonna be donking a lot.
So like the ace high double block effect carries over to the river because they bet some aces still on the turn.
Yeah, they bet a little bit of ace high, but mainly it's like pair plus a weak pair plus an ace. Like the ace7, ace5, they'll all check back. Ace9, ace9 probably won't check back. Ace10. But like, is the hand even strong enough to wanting to check raise the turn? Yes, but is it necessary? Not really, because you're already way ahead of the value that you beat besides trips, and you're not really wanting to get folds from anything. So you just let everything in. I mean, there's a flush draw, but yeah, okay. Flush comes, you can just check call. So like it's not too bad. It's like check, and then they're betting some eights. Right, and you just call. Like nines, like here, you got jacks, queens. They want to raise, go for the check raise on the turn. If they do check, because they can get value from a lot of worse hands. There you got the middle pair. I guess it's yeah, middle pair. Yeah, tens never checks on the turn. So like if and this is what's going to happen with a lot of these over pairs. Like here you've got tens preflop, it's a 9 high board, you go for the check raise on the turn, it misses, so it's always like pot on the turn. Versus aces.
You mean you check raise on the flop, right? And then you...
Yeah, like you're attempting a check raise on the flop. So here you've got tens, like it bets a lot, but you check, and then when you face a bet, you always raise, almost always. Right? And if your check raise misses, you basically always bet the turn. On an undercard, and even an overcard, you're going to be betting pretty high frequency as well.
Okay. What about on an ace? Is it any different on an ace?
Yeah, probably a little bit different. Still betting a lot. So that's how you play the over pairs. Aces like to check a lot. Like there's this triple check line with aces where you just go check check, and then like it's like a 9, and then it goes check check. And then it's a check, and then it's just, and you check again. Cause yeah. Because by the time you get to the river, like they never have an ace left, and so they're always going to be betting for you. So it's like it's as if you're in position against, it's as if you're in position with a slightly bigger pot. So yeah, you make sure to take that triple check line with the aces there. And I'm sure that triple check line on like these kinds of boards happens fairly often when you're out of position. Yeah. Alright, I mean, yeah, ace is out of position, checks down a lot. Because it blocks the ace high. It's only really the spots where you don't want to be blocking ace high when you end up getting more value because your opponent grows the pot for you. You think it's being weak, but it's actually not. It's being like super strong by checking and then having your opponent bet for you. Your opponent grows the size of the pot for you, and then you can raise and then get more value that way. Anyway, hopefully we input everything correct. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? So all of these were on the same flop. Is this format better than looking at all the different flops?
I think this is a fantastic format.
All right, cool.
Because
you get to pick up on more nuances.
Yeah, so the reason I think it's good is like you get to study like what happens. So for example, today we looked at a connected board with a flush draw, right? And we got to see.
I like it when you do sort of a general theme, depending on whatever it is. When there's a theme throughout, I like that.
Yeah. Okay. And anyone got any questions? I might try a few more of these ones where you just look at one flop the entire time.
Well, I have lots of questions about the Valor calculator, but I guess I'll save that for the Valor tutorial.
Yeah, I mean, when the Valor calculator is finished, then I'll show you how to use it properly.
Great. Thank you for doing this. It's awesome.
Yeah, no worries. Anyone have any questions? No? All right. Great.
No.
I'll leave you guys to it.
All right.
See
Bye.
you.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.